Don't look behind you.
Don't look behind you.
You'll die.
You'll die. You'll die. You'll die.
Don't look behind you.
I used to live in a place where everybody was nice. Everybody there knew everybody else. We all lived happily in a diverse community and helped each other every chance we got. We would frolic in the sun and play when the day's work was done. There were never any real problems that couldn't be solved or things we weren't allowed to do. In fact, we didn't know what not allowed meant, as we had never done anything that shouldn't be allowed. We had an amazing life. Until they came. They came when it was night and got us before we knew what was happening. I heard screaming and crying from every direction as they threw me into a bag. I could hear all of my friends and family being bagged and carried away as they carried me. They carried me for quite some time. I struggled against my burlap sack, my burlap prison as I felt myself being dragged along. I was startled when we came to a halt after what seemed like hours. I thought they'd let me out of the bag and I'd finally see where we were being taken. It wouldn't be anywhere nice, I was sure. Instead of being let out into some other place with my loved ones, which is what I hoped and begged for, they did something much worse. I felt the bag being upturned until I was falling toward the hole at what was once the top but was now the bottom. As I rolled out of the bag, I caught a glimpse of my sister who was rolling out of the bag as well, and then felt myself collapse with a painful thud onto a box. The box was made of some strange material I'd never seen before. As I lay there stunned on my stomach, I felt a hand reach down and grab me by my torso. It flipped me over. I felt my legs fall funny as it did so. The giant monstrous hand reached down and resituated my arms and legs uncomfortably so that I looked like I was ready to give someone a big hug. I didn't dare move as they brought down some sort of tie which was fitted through the back of the box over each of my limbs. As the lid was brought down over the top of the box, I felt a large amount of air suck out of my enclosure. And it was dark. I was stuck. My arms and legs were situated so that I would be vulnerable to whatever opened this box, if and when that happened. I was tied and waiting. I felt the box being moved quite a bit. Every time I was lifted or slid across the surface, the unbearable sound would torture my ears. It was loud and full of bass as it rattled my head. I would feel the impacts as my head slammed the floor every time I landed. And then it happened. My box was put into something that after a while of sitting still began to just shake me. It was loud and shook me worse than anything I'd ever known. I felt my head slamming against the wall as a sound of thunder encompassed me for hours on end. Every second passed like days, and yet I know for a fact that this actually did continue for days. It had to have. As we finally arrived at our destination, it was like nothing I had ever seen before. I was let out of the box by a smaller monster than the one that had captured me. I was in a room bigger than any room I'd ever seen before. Another monster, even larger than the other I first saw, untied the strings as they moved around the box like it weighed nothing with me strapped down in it. The monsters were 10 times my size with almost hairless skin. A skin that was very smooth and similar in color to my hair, only lighter, much lighter. What hair they did have on this strangely colored skin was in strange places and in strange colors itself. One had very dark hair, whereas this smaller one had what seemed to be hair absent of color. Crazy part was that it sat on the very tip top of their heads and was very, very, very long. Now that I was seeing them in the light, I knew that I was to be truly terrified of these monstrous creatures. The larger one left me alone with the smaller one. After letting a few of my fellow villagers out of their boxes, of course, I got a chance to look around the room I was being kept in with the thing. I didn't dare move, however. Somehow I felt that if I moved, it would make this thing angry and bring on its wrath. The walls were the same color as my hair. I thought it was a strange choice of decor. There were very strange colored structures all around. I looked at one thing against the wall. It was flat and silvery. I realized it was like looking into water to see yourself, only better. In it, I could see the top of this room perfectly. The surface I sat on, it was very soft. I could feel every motion the monster made on it as I began to pick up my friends and family. It began to pick up my friends and family who had made it here. Where everyone else was, I wasn't quite sure, and I didn't really think I wanted to know. It picked them up and began to make very strange noises as it shook them, softly at first and then violently on occasion. It started slamming them up and down on the soft surface and prancing them around. At one point, I noticed it threw one of them behind it as if it wasn't even a real thing. It wasn't even alive. It picked me up, and with its now free hand, I felt my insides collapse as it squeezed me by my torso. I looked across and noticed in its other hand was my sister. I could see that she was just as frozen in fear as I was. The monster looked at both of us and made weird noises again. It puckered its lips and began smacking together as it looked from me to my sister. And in horror, I noticed that it was bringing us closer together. It positioned my sister's hand toward me and made it touch my chest. In horror, I retched as the thing made her velvety brown hand slide from my chest and down. As her hand got between my legs, all I could do not to shudder and vomit in repulsion. They began to move us closer together, smooching its lips the whole time, and as it pushed our faces together, I felt the sickness increase. They began rubbing us against each other, making smooching noises the whole time. After a few gut-wrenching minutes of this, it seemed to grow tired. I felt so much pain as I hit the wall. It threw me towards after. Where my sister had landed, I had no idea, as I had landed on my stomach, and I didn't dare roll over to look for fear of being noticed. In a heap on the floor, I slipped into unconsciousness as pain and revulsion overtook me. When I opened my eyes again, it was mostly dark. There was a small light in the corner that was changing colors so that the room I was in took on an even more sinister feeling. I could see the surface I was on before, and the head of the monster was sticking out from beneath the top of the structure I was on before. I looked around to see what else I could make out in the dark. I could see my sister crying in the corner. I didn't want to talk to her after what happened, so I decided to stay where I was and wait to see what I could develop about the situation, what understanding I could develop about the situation. As I sat there pondering, trying not to reflect too hard on the day's events, but focus on how to get away from here, I heard footsteps. No lights came on as the door cracked open, so I resituated to how I had been before I woke up. I heard strange noises again, the sound of both monsters I'd seen before. The big one had entered the room again. Their voices were quieter this time. The noises the big one made while hushed seemed angrier now than before. The small one, however, sounded scared. I heard these noises and several other noises from the creatures. The big one left again. After the big one left, I swear I heard the small one cry. It sobbed until it fell asleep again. As it did so, I felt the grip of sleep upon me again. I don't know what I just heard, but something tells me it wasn't right. And this day had gotten me to the point that I was ready to give up. Dreams came to me that night, dreams in which I was hurting the big monster, haunted my sleep. I felt the rush as I opened up its wet insides with my teeth, which had somehow become very, very sharp. I woke with a terrible jolt of fear as I heard shouting. The monsters were making strange noises, very loud now. Just as I had started to come around, I felt myself being kicked in the stomach. Pain engulfed me, starting at my abdomen and working its way to the tips of my toes and the top of my head as I felt myself slam against the wall again. I watched the monster stomping my best friend, who I just now realized was here as well. As I fell to the floor, I slipped out of consciousness. When I came to again, it was dark. The same events from the night before occurred. The big monster entered angry. There were even stranger noises than usual. He would make a grunting sound, and I would always be too terrified to look as it happened, and then he would leave and the other monster would cry. One day, the little one caught me moving it. It called in the big one to show, but I didn't dare move, and the little one kept pointing and shouting something over and over. It sounded like, the teddy, it moved. The teddy, it moved. The big one hit the little one in the face and shouted something and walked away. I began to feel sorry for the little one, actually. I began to see why she would do to us the things she did. I began to realize what the problem was. One night, after the little one had gone to sleep and before the big one had come back, I gathered up all my friends that I had, and I knew they had made it there. They shared the same feelings as I did. They knew what the problem was, and we all knew how to fix it. We decided that tonight was the time for action. After the big one left, and the little one fell asleep crying, we all gathered together. I took the lead, creeping to the door. The entrance was just slightly open, just enough to see a bit of light, and we opened it. I could hear the sound coming from the room at the end of the hallway. It was a steady sound, as if the breathing of the big one had somehow gotten louder. He was sleeping. All in a row, we crept down the hall, careful not to make a sound. The door was slightly open, just like the other monster's door. As we climbed up the structure these things slept on, we saw that there were two monsters in this bed. One we knew, and the other one almost as big, but had much longer hair, the same color as the others. Whatever this thing was, it was no better than the other big one. They seemed to get bad, worse, the bigger they got, from my experience. No matter. We ate what we could. It took the 10 of us about an hour to get through the whole meal. Luckily, we've always had big appetites, and we were very hungry to begin with. They screamed and made their strange noises as we clawed through their strange anatomies. They quietened down pretty quick into the meal, so we got to eat the rest of it in peace. It was much easier not to make a mess then, and we did make sure to clean up after. By the time we were done, there was nothing left but bones on the structure, maybe a drop of juice here and there. When the little one woke up in the morning and saw it, to our surprise, she was not pleased. She started kicking at us and tried to hurt us again. Luckily, it had been several hours since our meal, and no longer being outnumbered, it was fairly easy to subdue the little one, even while she was awake. We lived there for a while. The facilities were much nicer than the ones at home. We didn't even know how to get back there. Some new monsters came, though. They were all dressed in black. They had weird buttons, and not only did their heads make strange sounds, but their shoulders had little boxes that made strange sounds, too. We hid from them before they saw us. They left for a while, and then we snuck out the window. I was starting to understand their strange sounds. From what I gathered, they were coming back to take everything out of here. We've been looking for a home for a while now. We can't seem to find it, but it would be nice to have a rest. If you'd like to let us come stay with you, it would be awfully sweet. We promise we'll be nice, if you will.
怖い。